There we go. All right. We are here. I am here. I'm Joel Fieri. It is Thursday morning. So we're here with the chat session. And today I'm going to start maybe for a couple of weeks here, going to talk about the state of religion or faith or whatever label you would put on it in America. And it started with oh, look who's here. Robin, I haven't seen you here in a while. Good to see you. Carrie, Robin came in before you, Carrie. Nobody usually comes in before Carrie. All right, good to see you both. Well, now that we have a couple people here, I think I will put this video on. This is Fox and Friends show that we're talking about the rise, why more young men are turning towards Catholicism. Let's play that for you now.
Well, more Americans are turning to Catholicism, with the National Catholic Register saying, quote, certain dioceses are reporting increases of 30%, 40%, even 50%, even more than some, even 70% when it comes to converts last year. So what is making Catholicism cool again? Gen Z influencer Isabel Brown, the host of the Isabel Brown Show, joins us now. Isabel, this is such a fascinating topic. The Free Press also had an article last week come out about why is Catholicism cool again? What is happening specifically with Gen Z?
Great point, Rachel. This is a cultural revolution largely led by young people. And to see headlines come out last week that what makes Catholicism cool is trending in America is a very fascinating moment in our culture, because it just goes to show that God's not done with American culture yet. Throughout my lifetime, really, America has culturally become one of the biggest exports of cultural degeneracy around the world, particularly in the West. You watch the degradation of marriage, the normalization of transitioning children, abortion by the millions for the most vulnerable in our society over the past several decades. And in the midst of this darkness, we're watching young people run back towards God, not even towards rainbow-washed, half-in, half-out cultural Christianity, like I think we've seen throughout the last several years, but tradition with a capital T, preferring the traditional Latin Mass, wanting the Eucharist, and reviving the Christianity that the world has known for 2,000 years as we continue to transform our culture in America from the inside out, bringing God back to the world again. So,
okay. All right. So I think this is a pretty interesting and pretty surprising development. I think who else is here? Lucas is here. Good to see you, Lucas. Thank you, Robin. Tell her we're on. Tell who? So, all right. Okay, so that's all you guys saying good morning to each other. Yeah, so it's funny. There's one thing I didn't think would happen in this country. I never thought about it. If I would ever thought about it, it was that the Catholic Church would start growing and appealing to young men, because my entire experience with Catholicism, my last name is Fieri, which is Italian, and my dad is a Roman Catholic, or was Roman Catholic. A very nominal one. It essentially meant nothing other than it was his upbringing. He went to Catholic school, but it certainly didn't take with him. I think I told you last week, my dad was the son of a Chicago gangster in Al Capone's era. So he grew up very rough, and his idea of being a Catholic was going to church twice a year, Christmas and Easter. He would go in and wait till they passed the plate, throw in $100 and leave. That was his spiritual service for the year. So my mom was not Catholic. She was Protestant. She was from a mainline denomination, and that's where I went to church back in the 60s, when mainline denominations were at least still somewhat orthodox and committed to the gospel. So that's where I first heard the gospel and first became a Christian, was in a mainline denomination. So, um, oh, AC's here. Good to see AC. Good. Got a crowd. All right. So, and in my experience with, and even myself, I was quickly, by the time I was in my teens, it was pretty obvious that the mainline denomination that we were in and the other mainline denominations were moving away from what I would call Orthodox Christianity and had very little to offer a young teenager like me or my sister. So we started going to an evangelical covenant church, and I've been at evangelical churches ever since. And my only experience with Catholicism has been my dad's side of the family, really. And of course, have friends that were Catholic and still are. I still have friends that are Catholic. But my main experience with Catholicism is people leaving Catholicism, either because it never really took to them. It was a cultural thing, or they resented the dryness of it, and a lot of them, frankly, resented the hypocrisy of it. I'll know a lot of people in my immediate friends that I have now who left the church over the priest and molesting young boys controversies that the Catholic Church has endured over the last 40, 50 years, whatever it is. And some of the decisions that were made by the Catholic leadership in terms of that. I can think of two people in our neighborhood right now that left the church because of that. And that was a big hit on the Catholicism's image here in the United States. But, there is a new pope. He is American. And that's, the idea of a pope to me is one of the reasons why I'm not Catholic. It's just, I don't see it. Okay. With a surname like Spielman, you can kind of figure my heritage. Is that like Spielberg? Yeah. So you're probably Jewish. And that's something maybe I'll get to in this series. I'm going to talk about Catholicism, and then I'm going to discuss evangelicalism, which is my bent, I guess. And then probably talk a little bit about the mainline denominations and what happened to them, and how we can learn from that. So, Chantel. Hi, Chantel. I think we've met before last week, I think. And glad to see you. A new name, I guess, not a new face, but glad you're here. So I was somewhat surprised by this. Catholicism is becoming one of the trending things she says is Catholicism is becoming cool. That's one of the trending things. And you do see it in my research. I've come across a lot of that. That is very much trending now with young people, especially young men. And this is, if you guys have heard me long, one of my soapboxes is young men or men in general and Christianity and faith. And like I told you last week, well, when Ben and I were talking about this, we were talking about how this is really a follow-up to what we were talking about on Friday. If some of you caught that, is that men and young people in general, but mostly men, have a father hunger. Because if you didn't check out last Friday's show with Ben and myself, Constitution Vet Friday, and his point, we were talking about a video from Charlie Kirk on how young people are turning to faith because there is a father hunger. It's inside of us. It's part of being made in the image of God. That when you're young, you yearn for male leadership. It's just the way it is. You also yearn for a motherly comfort, I guess, a motherly care that is probably stronger. But the need for male father type leadership, I quoted my friend Dave Murrow, who wrote the book Why Men Hate Going to Church. There's mother love and father love. Mother love is caring, it's gentle, it's It's not, what do you call it? It's not black or white. It's not, it's in the moment. Well, what I always say, I've noticed in my marriage and in a lot um, of different situations I've been in business and school and church, there's a difference in general. It obviously doesn't go 100% each way, but I found that women tend to focus on the here and now, and I call it the micro. And mother love and feminine love is about the micro. What's happening right now? Let's get comfort. Let's get peace. Let's get good feeling here and now. Whereas male love and male attention is given to the big picture. What's long term going to happen here? So in the discipline of our kids, like I said, I was married a widow with 2 kids. So I'm a stepfather, so I sometimes tread lightly. But that's a lot of the differences with my wife and I raising the kids. Was she was concerned about the here and now, and I was concerned about, hey, in the long run, this is what needs to happen. Discipline needs to happen now because in the long run. And they're both equally legitimate, but it's that balance you got to strike, right? And that's the eternal struggle in our society and in our church. Mother love has become predominant. We're worried about comfort right now and not the big picture. We're worried about the micro, being comfortable. Preachers and priests, or whatever you would call them, rabbis, are worried about, when they talk, they're worried about offending people right here and now. What is going to happen to me after the service? Who's going to come up to me offended? How many emails am I going to get tomorrow morning about this? Whereas male leadership or male reception of a message can be easier put in the big picture, in the macro. Okay, that needs to be said because in our culture, say it's a cultural issue in our culture. If we compromise on this down the road, we will compromise on everything. So again, it's a balance, but the here and now comfort of feminine love, motherly love is winning out, and it's out of balance. So there's this hunger, like Ben and I were talking about, is predominant because it's been absent. Whatever's absent is what you miss, right? And you cannot, as much as people try to influence, or some would say beat it out of young men and even young women, there is, how many times they tell them that male, masculinity or male leadership is toxic, or whatever you would want to call it. You can't beat it out of people. It's, as people who are made in the image of God, we have one of the things that manifests that is a father hunger. So they see that in churches, and they flock to them. That's where churches stand out. One of the ways that churches stand out in our culture, unless, like this lady said, you're a rainbow washed, you're in rainbow flags, and that whole mainline denomination vibe that's mostly mother love. It's mostly female, and it's mostly mother love, and that's just not going to scratch that itch that we have. But if you look at the opposite of that, it's a traditional Catholic mass, a traditional Catholic church that has just the epitome of tradition and liturgy and structure, and it provides certainty in a way. I know what to expect from a Catholic mass, and I know that preacher is going to be reading the Word of God, just straight reading. It's one of the things that I got to admit, the Catholic Church, they stick to the Word. I mean, they just there's not a lot of Catholic priests that have faux hawks and tattoos and are wearing tight shirts and work out and try and be trendy and hip, like, which is where the evangelical church is going. And I talked last week with Ben about how a Catholic church, a Catholic cathedral, is built. It's built in the shape of a cross. And the choir is behind this partition when they sing. You can hear them because the acoustics of the building are perfect, right? But you don't nobody's performing for you on stage. They're just singing. And when the rites are given, the priest is in a robe and a hat, and there's nothing standing out about him. It's all about the religious and faith ritual that they're doing. And when the homily is given, which is not usually it's not a performance. Okay. It's homily is a good word for it. Okay. It's just kind of, and he's not center stage. He's usually up to the right. So he's not performing either. And there's a lot of kneeling, and there's just a lot of structure to it. And in an age when all our institutions are falling apart, young people, structure appeals to young people. Tradition, they see what's happening in society. And, Ben and I were talking about the last 4 or 5, 10 years, or this lady was talking about on the video, our society is upturning every tradition, every institution has been turned upside down. And, these are young people that also went through, this thing like pandemic lockdowns and weren't able to go to school, and all this uncertainty that they have, all this fear that's been given into them, all this propaganda, leftist propaganda about gender identity, about all kinds of things, about the color of their skin, how that makes them maybe a bad person, all this kind of stuff. And of course they're going to look for that kind of structure and that kind of tradition because they instinctively know. It's not, you can't be all, everything can't be just broken down. And all the traditions and all the identities that we've had as Americans, as humans, really, as Westerners, whatever you want to call it, as a Christian nation, it just can't all be thrown away. But that's been their experience in life. All this has been thrown away, and being creatures created in the image of God, they know this is wrong. And the absolute antithesis of that, if you would pick it, would be the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church has been doing this for hundreds and hundreds of years. Like this lady said, talk about something that you can rely on, is the Catholic Church is that. So that's the appeal that it has, as surprising as it is. So I want to get to comments here. Let's see. Let's see. What do we got here? Okay, my grandparents hid their Jewish star behind the Catholic religion in 1940s Netherlands. Okay. That's interesting. Oh, that's right. Chantel, I'm sorry. I forgot. That is Lucas's wife. Dumb. Okay. That's fine. I won't forget that again. Let's see. I think Carrie had an interesting comment here. I think we'd all be Jewish. Okay. Robin, Jesus is the Christ, the originator, the teacher of the Jewish faith. Jesus is the Messiah. I will never hide my messianic faith. Good for you. So you are a messianic Jew. That's amazing. That's outstanding. The frequency that is built in the building almost vibrates. I've been a Catholic church, not for me. I like the Hillsong vibe. You do? Okay, because I'm going to talk about the Hillsong vibe when we talk about like evangelicalism. So, and I'll have a lot to say about that. Oh, Chloe's just arriving. So, let's see. Okay, that's good for the comments. Good comments. So, so like I said, it tells you about our cultural moment and how our anything goes culture has hopefully pretty much run out. And if there's something that makes that point clear, is the fact that the Catholic Church is actually growing and is cool again. Because it is like I said, if there's one thing that's the antithesis of what our postmodern culture is trying to promote, it's the Catholic Church. And the Catholic Church has been so uncool for so long, at least 40 years, because, and I don't even know that the Catholic Church was cool when I was young, but Pope John Paul II was cool. And that guy was a great leader. Him and Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher pretty much together brought down the communist. They brought down the Iron Curtain and pretty much won the Cold War, which the further we get from that, the further, like I said, the more further you get from everything. I mean, I think a couple of days ago was the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II. So the further you get away from that, the muddier it gets. But we can't forget just what Pope John Paul II did to bring down communism and to bring down the Iron Curtain. But that didn't really back then translate to the Catholic Church. I don't think it was just he was just a rock star. But like I said, if anything tells us that this postmodern age we've been in is starting to peter out, whatever you call it, starting to decline, has had its day, has had its run, is that the Catholic Church is cool again, especially with young people and especially with young men, because there's a very well-known proverb or adage or trope that a society is only as strong as its young men. A society determines its strength and viability and morality by how it treats its young men, how it raises its young men. And young men have been beaten down. The whole thing of a war on boys that's happened over the last 40 years has got to be over. They can't be told anymore that they're toxic. They can't be told anymore that the future is female. They have to have a place, and we have to start investing in our young men and even in our older men too, our middle-aged men. We can't leave men out of our society. We can't leave men out of our churches, certainly. But one of the things I'll get to, and one of the things that my friend Dave Murrow pointed out in his book, the church is or has been, in a way, abandoning men for the last 40, 50 years. And his motto is, he's not bringing men back to the church. He's bringing church back to men, because largely, and it's happening in the evangelical world too, and certainly happened in the mainline denominations, that there's about a 60-40, and I wouldn't even be surprised now if it's 65-35 division between men and women in even in evangelical churches. It's much higher, certainly in mainline denominations. It's probably 80-20, I would guess. When you look at a lot of the Methodist and Episcopalian and Presbyterian churches, those kind of churches, you see mostly women, clergy. And I think in the Black church, it's probably 70-30. But a church that can attract men, especially young men, and train them up in that church's theology is going to be a thriving church. And it's also going to attract young women too, because where strong men are, again, it's part of our makeup. It's part of what God had put into us. Where strong men, or where men are made into strong men, women will go, and whatever institution that is will thrive. Okay. Again, it's the old adage that circle will say that hard times make strong men make good times make weak men, and weak men breed bad times. And then it just goes around and round. So hopefully we're on the upswing, faith-wise. Hopefully this rise in young men reaching out for church life, for spirituality, will bleed into the evangelical church. I have yet to see it, and that's something I'll talk about probably next week, because again, that's my world, and that's one of my particular soapboxes. So we'll talk about that. We have some new comments. Okay, Robin, when Satan was let loose in the world, the truth of God was scattered to the corners of the world. I believe all religions have pieces of the truth. Bring them together, you have the full gospel. I can't agree with there, but that's an interesting theory. Interesting. But that's Jesus really didn't leave room for that. But we have Shalaka. Okay. Oh no, why would they flock to Catholicism? How about Christianity? A lot of people would say that, and a lot of people I know don't think the Catholic Church is legitimate Christianity. I have my problems with it. But one of the points that in my research that I keep coming across is this is what the church was like until the Reformation, until Martin Luther, for 1,500 years. Christianity was Catholicism, really, or at least for 1,000 years. So are we going to go back and say, okay, all those for 1,500 years, none of the people that were in the church were Christian? That just doesn't. I'll be interested when we get to heaven to see that whole story, because I have so many problems with the Catholic Church. And like I said, my dad was Catholic. I have Catholic relatives and Catholic friends, and they're beautiful people. I wouldn't say they're not Christian simply because, like I said, I can't believe that for 1,500 years people weren't Christians. Christians, God doesn't work like that. His church has grown. The Church of Jesus has grown. The body of Christ has grown. And since then, as was God's plan. And I just can't believe that the church universal at that time for all those years was not legitimate. And again, you can say a lot of people, we've gotten away from that. The Reformation really did help the Catholic Church get back on track in a lot of ways. Let's see, Lucas. I've been to Hillsong United live, and the old downside I have found it's hard to enter into worship when you're trying to watch the show. That's a very good point. That is a very good point. Yeah. And again, like I was talking with Ben, I'll probably do a whole thing on what we call worship. Okay, we have pretty much relegated worship to only music, only a show, and I'll do that sometime soon. A lot of talk about Robin's story about let's see. Yeah. So Chloe saying, thank God, Robin, your grandparents were able to hide behind Catholicism, and now you are here. Yeah. And that's another thing we can't forget. That was a big part of the story of World War II, which was probably the biggest story of the whole 20th century. And World War II made the society we have today. And in a lot of ways, it made the churches we have today. It made the institutions we have today. So again, the Bible does talk a lot about remembering. And that's something that I find the evangelical church is losing sight of. We don't remember, and we have to hearken back to a lot of traditions, maybe some of which were not biblical and became, just kind of means to an end for themselves. But there are a lot of practices and people and events and things that God did that we have to remember. It's all over the Bible about remembering what God has done. And in our kind of hip efforts to be cool and relevant, we tend to look down upon the people that came before us, the people that did all the praying and all the giving and all the building and all the acted in faith before us. We tend to dismiss them because we were going to be new and hip and appeal to people that, have this postmodern idea that reject all that. We can't do that. So again, this is something we can go days and days and days about. It's been half an hour. And like I said, these things go really, really, really fast. So next week, I'll probably talk about evangelicalism, and then I'll probably hit the main lines, and maybe I'll talk about the Jewish Judaism also. And thanks for bringing that up, guys. So it's time to go. Thanks for listening. Thanks for the comments. Thanks for all showing up. We had more people today than I can remember. So we'll see you tomorrow with Ben. Again, thanks for listening. Take care.